With the start of Genshin's version 4.5, we have finally entered the patch of Neuvillette's first rerun. Now from what I've seen in the community, a lot of people have been awaiting his return, and in this video we're going to quickly run over whether you should pull for him. Now if you don't know what Neuvillette does, he is an on-field Hydro unit, so he's a DPS unit, and most of his damage is focused around his charge attacks. Now his charge attacks is literally Hydro Pump. He shoots a straight line, a straight beam of just Hydro damage. Now to perform these charge attacks without a huge wind-up, Neuvillette needs to consume these balls called Source Water Droplets. Now this is where his skill and his burst come into play. They do a decent amount of damage, but their main purpose is to generate these droplets for Neuvillette to consume and then use his charge attacks. So how strong is he exactly? Now if you ask a lot of the community, including myself, Neuvillette is going to be the strongest on-field DPS that we currently have in the game. Now just because he's insanely strong doesn't mean that he doesn't have some weaknesses. So right now we're going to quickly run through everything good and bad about Neuvillette. Now despite Neuvillette doing a ton of damage, a lot of what makes him really strong is actually how comfortable and convenient he is to play. Firstly, he has one of the best AoEs in the game, and this is without grouping at all. So some characters like Childe might have stronger AoE potential if the enemies are all grouped up together. But similar to Xiao, Neuvillette can aim exactly where you want to put his AoE damage. So while you're doing his charge attack and you have that Hydro beam in front of you, you can actually move around pretty quickly. And you can also aim that charge attack in a full 360 degrees around you. Now we also have his self-sustaining kit. When Neuvillette does a charge attack, he drains his health. But when you suck up those source water droplets we talked about earlier, he's going to heal a huge chunk of his health back. Now for those of you who might have played Wriothesley or Lyney and are a bit worried about this HP drain, since Neuvillette is HP scaling, he's going to have a huge health pool to begin with. So when he does drain his health and it goes all the way to half health, you're still going to have 20,000 health, which is like playing Wriothesley and Lyney at full health. So if you wanted to, you can easily play him without a healer at all. So you can just dedicate those other 3 team slots entirely to either sub DPSs or buffers. So while there might be other DPS characters like Hu Tao or Alhaitham that might do more damage than him on paper, a lot of the stuff that makes him so comfortable to play, like his insane AoE, puts him on top. Now on the topic of buffers in Neuvillette teams, we have to quickly talk about Furina. Now Furina, our Hydro Archon, is one of the best buffers in the game. Not only does she give huge amounts of damage percent, she also has a skill which is an 100% uptime damaging ability. Now the reason Furina works so well with Neuvillette is not entirely because of her buff. Obviously her buffs are super valuable since Neuvillette scales off HP, so a lot of the existing attack buffs don't really work on him. Neuvillette actually plays his own hand in buffing Furina's damage, which is definitely not something to be overlooked. Now if you aren't familiar with how Furina's buffs work, she buffs more depending on HP changes in your team. So the more HP you lose and the more HP you gain, the more Furina will buff. Since Furina herself drains the whole team's HP, this normally means you want to run a party-wide healer who can heal your whole team to full health to maximize her buff. Since Neuvillette himself actually drains his own health and then heals it back himself very quickly, he actually can help Furina maximize her buff almost by himself. Now normally you still might want to run a party-wide healer, but that just means Furina's buff will be maxed out a lot quicker than playing with other DPS. Now just a quick reminder, this doesn't mean Neuvillette's just making the buff bigger for himself. Furina's buff actually also works on her as well. So that means Furina's damage is also going to be increasing alongside Neuvillette. Now we also have Hydro Resonance, which means when 2 Hydro characters are on the same team, the entire party is going to get 25 HP percent. Finally, since most of these teams are going to be built around buffing Neuvillette's Hydro damage, Furina's going to also benefit from all these buffs. So while I'd actually give the title of Neuvillette's best buffer to Kazuha probably, Furina works amazingly well with Neuvillette in tandem as they both help each other out. Now I know I went on a little rant about how Neuvillette and Furina work so well together, but the reason this is important is because Furina is probably the best buffing character in the game, which means the fact that Neuvillette synergizes so well with her puts him above a lot of the other DPSs that can't really utilize Furina as well. Now this doesn't mean if you don't have Furina, Neuvillette's going to be really disappointing. He still does a lot of damage by himself. And since he's a Hydro character that applies good amount of AoE Hydro, he actually works really well in a lot of reaction based teams. In fact, some of his best teams are going to be Taser teams, so Electrocharge teams, or just good old Hyper Bloom. Now outside of his combat and his gameplay, Neuvillette also has some really good things going for him in terms of building him. Now his best artifact set is going to be the Marechaussee set, which is an in a really efficient artifact domain to farm. Almost all the Fontaine DPSs we have right now and Xiao use the Marechaussee set, and with the existence of Furina, every single DPS in the game can use it. Golden Troop, so the other artifact set in that domain, is also really efficient. A lot of players have Furina, and Furina's best in slot by far is Golden Troop. Same with Fischl. Fischl's an incredible 4-star unit that most people should already have built, and if you don't, you should build her. She also uses that artifact set, so if you are farming the domain for Neuvillette, you're going to be building a ton of different other characters at the same time. Neuvillette is also going to take a huge W in his weapon options. He only has 3 real weapon options I would recommend, those being Prototype Amber, Sacrificial Jade, and then his best in slot Tome of Eternal Flow. So his signature is obviously going to be the highest damage you can get, but Sacrificial Jade can actually come pretty close, especially at high refinements. So if you're a Battle Pass buyer, you already have an option there. And then for free-to-play players, Prototype Amber is a craftable weapon that works perfectly fine. I use it on my Neuvillette, so you can check out some of my other Abyss showcases to see how strong he is with the weapon, but I've had no problem clearing the Abyss at all, and I've even done some solo runs with him. Finally, if you are someone who does like hyper investing into characters, Neuvillette has a ton of options. Obviously, we had his signature weapon that we just talked about, which is going to give him a ton of damage. His constellations are pretty good, especially his C1, but definitely don't feel pressured to pull for it because he functions perfectly fine at C0. So now, while I have gone on for 5 minutes about how good Neuvillette is, there are some reasons why you might not want him on your account. Now, we talked about Neuvillette being pretty self-sustaining with his inbuilt healing, but what he doesn't have in his kit is interruption resistance. So while you are using your charge attack, you can move around quite quickly and kite enemies, but if you do get hit, there's a good chance you're going to get your charge attack cancelled. Luckily, unlike Wanderer, he will be able to tank through some smaller hits and continue his charge attack, but still this can be really annoying against some bosses. And if you play with a teammate like Kuki or Xiangling that needs to be close to the enemy, you won't be able to kite around while using your charge attack. Now, most of the time, this just means you have to slot in a shielder. This is going to either be Zhongli or Baizhu, but you can also go with 4-star options like Layla. Now, in my experience, there are actually a lot of times where you can get away with playing Neuvillette without a shielder, but you'll definitely need to have a shielding character ready just in case the enemies you're fighting are extra aggressive. Now, this next reason might be super subjective, but from what I've seen, a lot of people don't actually enjoy Neuvillette's playstyle. Now, while he does do a lot of damage, all you have to do when playing him is just hold left click very quickly to start his charge attack, and you literally don't have to do anything else. You could compare this to Ganyu, where a lot of players complain that it's really boring just standing back and charge shotting. Neuvillette is kind of similar in the way that you stand at a pretty safe distance and you just hold your charge attack in one direction. Also, if you do get Neuvillette, there's a good chance that you might end up benching a lot of characters that you really like. Since he makes the Abyss so easy and so comfortable, if you're not someone who likes to clear it multiple times, testing out different teams, there's a good chance you might stop using older characters that you might really enjoy just to use Neuvillette for that extra comfort. Personally, for me, even though I clear the Abyss multiple times, mainly for my videos, Neuvillette has actually made me stop using Ayato as much. And I do really like Ayato. I even have his signature weapon, and I actually spent a lot of time making him really good. But when you have a character who just does his job but better, it makes it really hard for me to find an excuse to play Ayato again. So for those of you guys who don't really like testing teams in the Abyss, I definitely would think about this a little bit before pulling for Neuvillette. Now, the biggest reason for not pulling Neuvillette is the same for any other character, and it's if you want characters that will be running around the same time. Now, right now in the banner, we have Chiori and Ito. Next to Neuvillette in the second half is going to be Kazuha. And then in 4.6, we are going to have Arlecchino. And since the Archons always run 4 patches after their release, Furina will also be in that patch. For Arlecchino, if you're at all interested in her, I would highly recommend waiting for the 4.6 livestream. It should happen at least 1 week before 4.6 comes out, and you'll have plenty of time to consider rolling between the two. Now, on the screen right now, I've quickly popped up a visual showing how long it's been since every character's rerun. If you are interested in any of the characters on the higher end, there's a really good chance they're going to be rerunning soon, even though there is no official announcement yet. Now, just to summarize, if you still haven't decided whether you want them, if you have no other characters that you want coming soon, and you want to make all the content in the game easy, Neuvillette is going to be a great pull for you. On the other hand, if you have existing DPS that you really like and you want to make them better, I would consider not going for Neuvillette and maybe aiming for supports like Kazu instead. Now, one thing I actually haven't brought up yet, if you don't have another Hydro 5-star in your account, I would highly recommend leaning toward pulling Neuvillette. Hydro is such an important element in a lot of team comps, and our 4-star Hydro options other than Xingqiu are pretty bad. Now, if you have your eye on other Hydro options like Farina or Yelan, then you're good to go, wait for those guys to come out, but if not, Neuvillette might be a really good option for your account. Now, I know it's super early, but if you are going to be going for Neuvillette, good luck with your pulls. And with that, we have come to the end of this video. If it did help you out, I'd appreciate if you left a like and subscribed. Thanks for watching.